She divided 8 properties without giving me a single one. But the day she was rushed to the hospital, she called me 100 times. My only reply was, "Who are you looking for?" My name is Helene, a woman in my 40s. For 15 years, I was the daughter-in-law in a large, complicated, and calculating family. While my friends were starting to enjoy a quieter life, I was still lost in the endless cycle of cooking and caring for my husband's family. But perhaps it was through this that I learned to be silent, patient, and to see people more clearly. My husband is the eldest of 4 brothers, with 1 younger sister. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Dubois, was a sharp, somewhat cold woman. She didn't dislike me, but she certainly didn't love me either. She always kept a distance, as if waiting for me to make a mistake. I married into her family at 25, right after university. My husband was a junior engineer with a meager salary, and we lived in a small rented room. I thought if I just worked hard, everything would be fine, but it wasn't that simple. From day one, I was responsible for the cooking and cleaning for the entire large family. My sisters-in-law were used to being pampered, sleeping in until noon while I was up at 5 a.m., to go to the market and prepare breakfast before heading to my own job. In the evenings, it was the same routine all over again. I became a shadow in that house, present everywhere, but noticed by no one. My mother-in-law never said thank you. She only observed and judged. "Is the soup supposed to be this watery? Why is your father-in-law's shirt still wrinkled?" I would just smile and swallow her words. My husband knew but never defended me. "She's old, that's just her way. Don't take it to heart," he'd say. I didn't take it to heart. I just let it carve a small wound in it, a little deeper each day. Years passed. I had a son and a daughter, my only comforts in a suffocating life. I never concerned myself with the family's assets, land, property, none of it. I believed that if I lived decently and cared for my family, I would be treated fairly. Until one winter day, Mrs. Dubois summoned all her children. On the table, she laid out 8 property deeds, neatly stacked. "My health is failing," she announced. "I've decided to divide the properties now to avoid future disputes." The room was silent. She called out her children's names, one by one, assigning them each a house. 8 properties, 8 names. My husband and I were not mentioned. I remained silent. My husband only frowned slightly but said nothing. "The eldest has a stable job and a decent house already," my mother-in-law declared. "It's only fair to give a little more to the others." I bit my lip. It wasn't about fairness. It was about the fact that I never asked, never demanded. So she assumed I didn't need anything. My brothers and sisters-in-law all nodded in agreement. Mother is so fair. I quietly led my children outside. I didn't feel anger, just a profound sense of emptiness. What does a person who gives everything to her family ultimately receive? But life has unexpected turns. One day, my phone rang incessantly. It was my in-laws, one after another. "Helene, Mother's been hospitalized. The doctors say it's serious. You have to come now." I stood by the window, my voice calm when I finally answered. "Who are you looking for?" After nearly 20 years as a daughter-in-law, I had never asked such a question. When my mother-in-law was sick, I was the one who ran to the pharmacy. When my father-in-law broke his leg, I took him to the doctor. I was a constant, reliable presence. But when the 8 houses were divided, I was forgotten. Because I didn't fight, they assumed I didn't care. After that call, I turned off my phone. My daughter looked up at me. "Mummy, who called?" "Someone who only remembers me when they need something," I said softly. That evening, my husband came home. "Did you get the calls? Mother's in the emergency room." "I heard," I replied, looking at him directly. "But I'm not going." "Why not?" "She's still my mother," he said, surprised. I gave a faint smile. "When she divided the houses, did she remember us? I don't need a house, but I needed a little acknowledgement. She has 8 other children to call upon now." He fell silent. He wasn't a bad man, just a weak one. He had never once stood up for me. Later that night, my youngest sister-in-law, my mother-in-law's favorite, called. "Helene, I'm begging you. Please come to the hospital. Mother keeps asking for you." I felt a pang of sympathy but remained firm. "Do you remember the day she divided the properties? You said she was being fair, didn't you?" I wasn't thinking," she stammered. "You weren't thinking then, but you're thinking of me now." My voice was even, but each word was a needle. I didn't hate my mother-in-law. I just no longer wanted to be the invisible helper they could summon at will. If I went to the hospital, it would be because I chose to, not because they demanded it. I called my husband. His voice was tired. The doctor said she had a heart attack. She's stable now, but very weak. Did she ask for me? Yes, he admitted. She asked why you hadn't come. I'll come tomorrow, I said. Not because anyone called, but because I want to see her. That night, I sat with my old diaries. The pages were yellowed, filled with the quiet frustrations of a young woman trying to find her place. I realized I hadn't endured all these years for a piece of property, but to keep my heart from becoming as small as theirs. The next morning, I prepared some light broth and ginger tea. I dressed in a simple dress, my hair tied back neatly. At the hospital, I walked to her room and knocked softly. The first eyes I met were my mother-in-law's. She looked frail, her usual sternness replaced by exhaustion. When she saw me, her lips moved and she whispered, "Helene, is that you?" It had been so long since she had called my name with such gentleness. "I thought you were angry and wouldn't come," she said, her voice trembling as I sat beside her. "I wasn't angry," I replied, pouring her a glass of water. "I just didn't want to come as a servant who had been summoned." Her eyes welled with tears. "I was wrong. I truly was. I thought because you were silent you didn't need anything." This was the first time she had ever been so honest with me. "Mother, I never needed a house," I said softly. "I just needed to be seen as part of the family." Tears streamed down her face. For the first time in nearly 20 years, she reached out and took my hand, clinging to it as if she feared she'd never have another chance. "I know I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" I nodded. "Rest now. Let's not think about anything else." That afternoon, another storm began. My second brother-in-law called. "What were you doing at the hospital? Playing the part of the good daughter-in-law now that the inheritance is settled? Are you trying to get your share back?" "I'm not asking for anything," I said, my heart aching. "Good. Know your place," he sneered. "You've always been a shadow in this family. Don't start thinking you're an heir." I hung up. For the first time, I pitied them. Their constant calls weren't out of concern for their mother's health, but fear that I might gain something, that their share of the pie might shrink. They lived in fear of loss, not out of love. I stood on my balcony and looked at the night sky. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in 20 years I had found my voice. 4 days later, my mother-in-law was moved to a regular ward. Her condition had stabilized, but she needed absolute rest. The doctor said not to upset her. My sister-in-law told me over the phone, "But she keeps asking for you. Please visit every day to keep her spirits up." I agreed, though I knew my presence was a thorn in the other's sides. One afternoon, I received a text from my husband. "Come home early. Mother has called a family meeting." A family meeting while she was still in the hospital? A sense of foreboding washed over me. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, everyone was there. The air was thick with tension. All eyes turned to me as I entered. I greeted everyone politely and sat in a corner. My mother-in-law was helped into the room. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. "I know you all have questions," she began slowly. "When I divided the 8 houses, I thought I was being practical. Those who didn't have a house got one. But I see now that my reasoning has caused suspicion." My second brother-in-law interjected. "Mother, you did the right thing. Helene and my brother are comfortable enough." My mother-in-law looked at him, her voice weary. "But the person I truly need to speak to is Helene." The room froze. She continued, "I didn't give her a house, not because I forgot, but because I assumed she, being the gentle one, would understand. I was wrong. It is precisely because she never fought that she deserves the most respect." She took a deep breath. "I have one final property, A small apartment I bought with my own savings. That was never part of the family assets. I intend to leave it to Helene. I owe no one anything, but I owe my eldest daughter-in-law an apology and recognition. Mother, how could you? My second brother-in-law exclaimed, jumping to his feet. That's blatant favoritism. The room erupted in protests. I sat in silence. I hadn't wanted this. You call this unfair? My mother-in-law's voice cut through the noise. Then ask yourselves, who cared for your father for 6 months when he was bedridden? Who has never once asked me for anything, while the rest of you constantly asked when you would get your share? Everyone fell silent. She looked at me, her gaze softening. Helene, I don't know if you'll accept it, but it would give me peace. I looked at her, my throat tight. Mother, please give it to the others. Your words today are worth more than any house. Some sighed in relief. Others looked ashamed. I stood up, bowed respectfully, and left. I didn't need bricks and mortar. I needed acknowledgement. And that day, I had finally received it. But the battle was far from over. The next morning, my third sister-in-law, Diane, called. I heard Mother is leaving you the apartment. Are you really not taking it? I am not, I confirmed. Are you sure she won't secretly change her will? She pressed. That's her decision, I said coldly and hung up. They weren't worried about their mother's health, only about who would get the last remaining asset. A few days later, my second brother-in-law and his wife, along with Diane, showed up at my gate. We want you to promise you won't accept anything else from Mother, now or in any will, he demanded. I looked at them, a faint smile on my lips. Have I ever asked for a single thing? Your fear says more about you than it does about me. I have never fought for anything. But if you keep pushing, don't blame me if I change my mind. I closed the door on their stunned faces. The woman who was once a shadow was silent no longer. 3 days after that tense confrontation, a courier delivered a sealed envelope to me. It was from a law firm. Inside was a copy of a private will, drawn up by my mother-in-law a month earlier. In it, she stated clearly that she was leaving her private apartment to me, her eldest daughter-in-law, Tren Thier Hong. I leave her this asset for her 18 years of silence, she had written, for her patient heart, and because I know I have quietly wronged this woman. I sank into a chair, stunned. Later that day at the hospital, she saw me and smiled faintly. You received the letter, didn't you? Why, Mother? I asked. I told you I didn't need it. I know, she replied, her gaze distant. But if I didn't do this, I would carry this debt for the rest of my life. In your early years here, I looked down on you. I thought your quietness was a weakness. But I came to realize that true strength doesn't need to be loud. When your father was ill, you were the one by his side, not my own daughters. Her words brought tears to my eyes. I know the others will protest, she continued, which is why I did this privately through a lawyer. It's a belated apology. That very evening, my phone lit up with furious messages from my in-laws. Someone had leaked the will. So you play the victim in public but scheme in private? One message read. I didn't reply. The next day, I brought a bouquet of white lotuses to the hospital. Mother, I said quietly, I will accept the apartment. Not because I need it, but because I will not let your act of kindness be turned into a mockery. She nodded, tears of relief in her eyes. The will was posted in the family group chat. The eldest daughter-in-law steals the last inheritance, the caption read. An emergency family meeting was called. This time, I walked in with my head held high. Helene, you're quite the actress, my third brother-in-law sneered, pretending to want nothing, all while plotting to take everything. You accuse me of plotting? I countered, my voice steady. What about the one who stole a private document and spread it to cause chaos? Is that moral? My second brother-in-law slammed his hand on the table. The point is, this is unfair. Fairness isn't about how much each person gets, I said, looking at each of them. It's about how each person treated our mother. You called her frantically when she was sick, but did any of you ever call just to see how she was doing? The will is Mother's decision. If you have a problem with it, take it to court, but do not drag me into your greedy spectacle." I stood up, bowed to my mother-in-law, and walked out, leaving a storm of arguments behind me. I had drawn my line. The attacks, however, only grew more vicious online. Then one evening, I found my husband's old phone. Out of habit, he used to make voice memos. I scrolled through them and found a recording from 2 weeks prior, labeled "Family Meeting." I pressed play. It was my second brother-in-law's voice. "We can't let Helene get away with this. We need to get that will and post it online to expose her." Then I heard Diane's voice. "Leave it to me. I have a key to the drawer. I know the combination." My heart went cold. It was a coordinated attack. The next evening, I sent the audio file to the family group chat without a word. The chat exploded. My brother-in-law immediately left the group. Diane sent me a private message. "I'm sorry. Please don't show this to Mother." "You should be apologizing to her, not me," I replied. A few days later, my mother-in-law suffered a minor stroke. I rushed to the hospital in a downpour. As I sat by her bedside through the night, no one else came. My husband was stuck in a meeting. The others didn't answer their phones. "If I don't make it," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "do one last thing for me. There's a notebook in my bedside table at home. It has the safe combination. Take it. Don't let my children lose their humanity over this." In that moment, she wasn't entrusting her final wishes to one of her own children, but to her daughter-in-law. Perhaps, after everything, she truly saw me as her own. The next day, I went to the old house. Inside the notebook, tucked between the pages, was a letter addressed to me, to Helene, the last daughter-in-law I trust. I opened it slowly. "Helene," it began, "there is something I have kept secret for nearly 20 years. When you were pregnant with your first child, the doctors said it was a high-risk pregnancy. At the time, I told your husband to send you away, that you were too weak and a burden to the family. I said those cruel words. Not because I hated you, but because I saw you only as a liability. But the night you went into premature labor, you called for me. You grabbed my hand and whispered, 'Mother, don't let me die.' In that moment, I knew I was wrong. I was wrong to judge you, wrong to mistake your silence for weakness. And yet, you never held it against me. You only ever showed me kindness. Helene, I am sorry. For the first time, I am apologizing to someone who is not my blood. That apartment was my way of making amends. I wanted to give you the fairness you deserved. If the others cannot understand, let time be their teacher. You are my daughter-in-law, but just once, I want to call you my daughter, Mother Dubois." I folded the letter, tears streaming down my face. I cried not from hurt, but from a sense of being seen, of being loved. It was late, but it had come. I knew I had to share this letter, not to prove myself right, but to give my mother the final say, to let the family see the truth of the woman they had so eagerly misjudged. Days later, I called another family meeting. I was the one to call it, and the surprise was evident on their faces. I walked in holding the letter. "Before, I was silent for the sake of peace," I announced. "Today, I speak for my mother." I read the letter aloud. My voice was steady, and the room was completely still. When I read the part where she called me the daughter she trusted, the atmosphere shifted. Some bowed their heads in shame. My second sister-in-law was the first to speak, her voice trembling. If Mother really wrote that, then, Helene, I'm sorry." One by one, others mumbled their apologies. My second brother-in-law stood up, bowed his head low, and said, "I was wrong. I have nothing more to say." On the way home, my husband stopped the car. "Helene," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I never knew how strong you were. I've misunderstood you for so long." "It's all right," I said softly. "I understand myself, and that's enough." For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. My mother-in-law's health declined rapidly. I stayed by her side, day and night. One afternoon, a routine blood test at the hospital revealed something shocking. The doctor called me in. We found a significant genetic marker match between you and Mrs. Dubois, he explained. The probability of you being her daughter is over 75%. I confronted her with the results. Her face went pale, and then tears streamed down her cheeks. "Forgive me," she sobbed. "I was going to take this secret to my grave." She had me when she was just 19, the result of a forbidden affair. Her family forced her to give me up. She only saw me once. Years later, she found out where I was and arranged for her eldest son to meet me, never revealing our connection. "I was ashamed," she cried. "I thought being your mother-in-law was better than having you know the truth and hate me." I held her, and we both wept. The woman who had caused me so much pain was my own mother. And I, who had always felt like an outsider, had been home all along. The secret, of course, did not stay hidden for long. My siblings-in-law, having heard rumors from the hospital, arrived with lawyers in tow. "Is it true?" my second brother-in-law demanded. "Is Helene your biological daughter?" My mother looked at them, her gaze steady. "Yes, Helene is my daughter." The room erupted. They accused her, accused me, of a grand conspiracy to steal the entire inheritance. "That's enough," my mother declared, her voice stronger than it had been in months. She turned to her lawyer. "I want to redo my will. Everything I have left the apartment. My savings, it all goes to Helene. My other children have received their share." That evening, my mother signed the new will. She was finally at peace. She passed away a few weeks later, on a quiet September morning. In her final moments, she held my hand. "Don't let your heart close because of unworthy people," she whispered. "You have lived in the shadows long enough. You deserve to live for yourself now." I organized the funeral. My siblings-in-law came, their expressions a mixture of shame and awe. On the day of the burial, after the final prayers were said, I stood before everyone, holding my mother's will. Before she passed, my mother, Mrs. Dubois, left me as the sole heir to her remaining assets, I announced. But today, before all of you, I declare that I refuse this inheritance. A collective gasp went through the crowd. "I will not take the apartment, nor will I touch the savings," I continued. "Instead, I am transferring all of it into a scholarship fund in my mother's name, for orphaned children like I once was. I do this to end the cycle of greed that has plagued this family. My mother lost her daughter once. I will not let her memory be torn apart by her other children now that she is gone." Silence. No one said a word. That evening, I set up a small memorial for my mother at home. My husband stood quietly by the door. "You've earned the respect of the entire family," he said, "and mine as well." I smiled. I didn't need praise. I only needed a light heart. That night, I dreamt of my mother. She was smiling not with the cold distance of a mother-in-law, but with the warm, gentle love of a mother. And I, the woman who had lived as a shadow, had finally stepped into the light not by taking but by letting go.